And a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you. That, of course, was Joy to the World, the timeless Christmas carol, as released on the classic Christmas album, Christmas for a New Age. Oh, you've never heard of this album? Well, okay, it's not exactly a classic. In fact, few people have even heard of Christmas for a New Age. And frankly, it's easy to see and hear why. This is basically a CD full of relaxed, instrumental versions of traditional Christmas songs performed by an easy-listening electronic jazz ensemble. It's essentially an unremarkable album in almost every way. But there is one thing that makes it an interesting Christmas album, at least for me. This CD here is most likely the first compact disc that my family ever owned. Back in 1997 or 98, in November or December, my mom and dad went to a furniture store and bought a new TV. A much bigger TV than we had before. It was a whole 22 inches wide, if I remember correctly. When they bought it, the very enthusiastic sales lady threw in a piece of technology that was new to our home. This CD. Now granted, in 1997, CDs were not a new technology by any means, but up to that point, my parents had only owned a turntable and audio cassette players. So to my young mind, this CD represented a new science fiction-like technology that I had only heard of occasionally through friends and relatives. So even though when we first got the CD we had nothing to play it on, I was still fascinated by this new, completely digital way of playing music and kept wondering what it would sound like. Sure enough, that Christmas my parents bought me a little boombox with a CD player included. Now at last I had a way of playing this mysterious piece of digital audio. So for the first time, I put Christmas for a New Age into this new stereo and heard what a compact disc sounded like. Now, of course, in retrospect, I could have done a lot better for my first experience with CD audio, because this is pretty much the blandest album ever. But at the time, that didn't matter to me. I still played this album several times that Christmas because I was so interested in this technology that played music really clearly with no tape hiss or pops. It was just like the early days of film when audiences would flock to theaters to see the Lumiere brothers films of workers leaving a factory. It didn't matter what was shown in the movie, audiences were simply fascinated to see something that could capture real movements and actions and play them back again. It was the same thing with me. It didn't matter that I was listening to glorified elevator music. The sheer novelty of 16-bit digital audio was enough to keep me coming back. Well, for a while. Soon enough, the novelty faded and I started listening to CDs with music I actually liked. So for a long time, Christmas for a New Age languished on the shelf, to the point where I can't actually remember when I last played it. That is until recently, when I found it again and started getting curious about where exactly this thing had come from. Well, as you might expect from a generic, forgettable album like this, not much information seems to be out there. There are a few obvious clues, of course. We know from the back that this is Volume 6 of the Listener's Choice Christmas Classics series, which was released in 1992 by the good people at Medicom Incorporated. But unfortunately, we'll never be able to browse Medicom's free catalog of audio and video cassettes, since they no longer exist. The company merged with Media Bay Incorporated in 1998 and hasn't been heard from since. It also looks like Christmas for a New Age was one of the last in the Listener's Choice Christmas series, since Discogs only lists about 5 other albums in the series, and only 2 of them came after this one. And one of the ones that came after this one was another Christmas for a New Age, Popular Christmas for a New Age, released in the following year in 1993. Yes, just in case 42 minutes of synthesized music wasn't enough to get your Christmas party going, now you can entertain your guests with an easy listening version of White Christmas, too. To Metacom's credit, these new age albums seem like the lowest quality of their catalog. The label also released Handel's Messiah, performed by St. Paul's Choir and Chamber Orchestra in 1992, a pop album called Here We Come a Caroling, also in 1992, and the Nutcracker Suite by the London Symphony Orchestra in 1996. All of these titles look like they would have been a much better demonstration of a CD's audio quality, so why weren't these given away at the store my parents went to? Well, it's simple. The store, of course, wasn't interested in demonstrating the fidelity or dynamic range of the compact disc. They were interested in giving away gift items that were as cheap and inoffensive as possible. And frankly, there's no way you'll find a Christmas album as cheap or inoffensive as this one. It's everything a corporation could want in terms of music. Standard, relaxed arrangements that are familiar, recognizable, and don't take any risks. No lyrics, so there's no possible way someone could take offense to a religious theme they might have heard. And best of all, it's cheap. It has to be cheap. This CD really doesn't have that many credits. All the songs are traditional and public domain, so there's no royalties to pay to songwriters or publishers, plus the fact that the only performer credited on the album is someone or something called Music 2000. I don't know who or what Music 2000 is. I mean, that sounds like some kind of software that writes commercial jingles automatically. I'd imagine that Music 2000 was actually a small group of session musicians that the producers picked up through a classified ad. They got someone with a synthesizer, a drum machine, a saxophone player, and a couple of horn players. They got them all in the studio, had them record about 2 albums worth of material, paid them each $100 and sent them on their way. You can tell it was a one-off thing as well because this group only has 2 credits to its name and both of them are in this series and were released in the span of a year. The album was produced by David Milner, another mysterious name who seems to have worked mostly on various compilation albums over the years. Interestingly though, he is also credited on a couple of albums by Greg Lake. It might not be the same David Milner, but if it is, at least he's got a few noteworthy titles to his name. The other producers and arrangers on the album aren't nearly as notable in their work. Both Jason T. Miller and Jordan B. Miller, I presume they're brothers, have this CD as their only credit on Discogs. Maybe they did other work under different names, but I don't know. But ultimately, the information about this album is about as forgettable as the album itself. This really feels like a quickly done cash grab album recorded in between bigger projects. Judging by the rest of Metacom's catalog, they've produced much better works over the years, especially the many symphonies they've released. So if you're interested in supporting this defunct music company that's been gone for almost 20 years, go check out those. Handel's Messiah is light years better than Christmas for a New Age. Well, this album did make for a weird childhood story for me, and at least it made me want to listen to some better Christmas music. So with that, I say Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year to everyone. Hopefully you'll come back for more music-related stuff in the new year, and in the meantime, if you've got any stories about weird Christmas albums, I'd like to hear about those too. Cheers.